basic. That's what we're looking for. Thanks, Leah.
Welcome.
Leah is going to be in and out. She's obviously visiting family, and she needs to be able to record it, which is why she was here in the beginning. But today we're actually going to learn about one of my favorite artists. We're going to learn about Lee Krasner. I did a show at the beginning of the pandemic. It was my last public show, and it was a group show with a group of women that I had been meeting with, and we each chose an artist from the book 9th Street Women, and we did a series of work based on that artist, and my artist was Lee Krasner. I got kind of left with Lee Krasner, which was really strange to me because I was the only abstract artist of the group, and all of the artists were abstract artists. And you know what? It ended up being for the better for me because I didn't know a lot about Lee, and then I got to learn about her, and she's amazing. We have a lot in common. She has a very distinct personality, and she was a painter at a time that women were harshly judged. And so a lot of the history books talked about what Lee looked like, what her personality was like, and what her paintings were like. And it actually hasn't been until like the last 5 or 10 years that Lee's work has kind of received any kind of accreditation for the complexity of it. For those who don't know, Lee Krasner was married to Jackson Pollock. And he was an alcoholic. He was an extreme alcoholic. So towards the end of the relationship, it wasn't great. And she was actually studying in Paris and painting in Paris when he died. He died of DUI, all-induced accident. And so I found a video, of course. The video about this one that I really love is that you actually get to hear Lee. I read, like I said, I read a lot about her. And it was really awesome. We're gonna change some things. Okay, there we go. I like listening to Lee's voice as she talks about herself because I feel like that is the representation she would want us to have of her. So I'm really excited about this video.
I think all painting is biographical. I think you can read any artist if you take the trouble to. The first approval comes in this form. This is so good, you would not know it was done by a woman.
Jesus.
I once had that said to me. Yeah. It's the most peculiar feeling.
Yeah, I know. You put it beautifully. It's the most peculiar. You don't know quite what to do with the damn thing.
How does a painting incubate you?
Heavy. What do you mean?
Trying to get into your head when you're standing there in front of that wall.
You just take a deep breath and hope for the best and get into it. And sometimes, as I say, it comes through miraculously.
Wow.
Anything can send me off to when it's time to get started. And then when the momentum gets going, the rapport starts, then I'm in a work stretch. I did a batch of drawings. I had them pinned up in the whole studio. I went in one day, I hated them, and I tore them all up and threw them on the floor. When I went into the studio again, which was several days later, they looked pretty good that way. This seems to be a work process of mine. I'm constantly going back to something I did earlier, remaking it, doing something else with it, and coming forth with another more clarified image, possibly. I don't know. I can tell when the thing is alive and going, and that, gets me all my adrenaline going, and then I want to stay with it. I pretty much know by now. And when it's a dead duck, I know that too. Color for me is a very mysterious thing. I might say, I haven't done anything in blue, I'm going to use blue, but then it's like it comes out green or alizarin crimson or something. I'm aware of that. I'm conscious of that kind of thing, but I don't try to change it. I don't say it's got to be blue. And I insist on letting it go the way it's going to go rather than forcing it. That kind of thing I hold on to zealously. I think that's the essence. You know, don't tamper with that. Don't will it. Don't force it. Let it come through in its own terms.
That was rad. But I could watch her all day.
I know, she's so sassy. You know, she's actually really one of the most educated female painters. She studied
She's
with,
better than Pollock.
hands down.
Yeah.
Definitely
Sorry, I interrupted
for
you.
me. You definitely see some of her influences, some of Pollock's influences. Hold on, I'm pulling up some images and stuff. She's you know, she studied with a lot of really important people, and she was really smart as a painter. So we're going to kind of do Lee Krasner in two parts. You know, if you were at the last class, you heard me talk about how we're going to work on kind of collage-based abstract art for a couple of sessions just to learn about this stuff. We're going to do one of Lee Krasner's exercises for the second half of the class, but the first half of the class, we have to create the collage material first. So something that Lee was really known for, like she spoke about even in that video, is she was hyper critical of her own work, and she was a hyper editor. So she would come into a studio full of work and tear it up into itty bitty little pieces. As we have been doing all of these classes this last couple of months, I've talked to you about keeping the pieces you don't like, because they are good collage material. First though, my favorite series of Lee Krasner's work, she created after Jackson Pollock died. The reason that they were created after Jackson Pollock died is because she finally had access to a full-size studio. Yeah. Pollock had always had, I'm looking for the right one, just won't open it for some reason. Pollock had always had the bigger studio. And so when he died, she got to finally create work, but her grief was a very strange grief for her. So she wasn't able to paint during the daytime. And as I said, Lee Krasner was trained professionally and classically trained as a painter. So because she was painting at night, she had been trained that you did not use colors unless you had the perfect light. So she made what they call the Umber series. For me, I think that they're her most impactful works. It's not collage. I think they're absolutely stunning. This is one of the Umber pieces. Gesturally, she seemed to have it together the most, maybe because she was having access to grief and kind of those things. They're giant pieces. As we saw up here, you can see that is a ginormous piece. It was the first time she was ever able to go that large because she had been working in an upstairs attic of their farmhouse, and Pollock had the big barn, you know. They're just absolutely stunning to me. I think they're some of her very best work. And so my thought is, you know, we talk a lot about color in this class, and it's very hard to work in a neutral palette. So my thought is, so we need to create abstract fodder for ourselves so that we can rip it up and throw it on the floor of our studio and decide our new compositions with it, right? We're not really going to throw it on the floor of our studio. But so my thought is, I'm going to challenge myself, and I encourage you to join me. I have black, I have white. I have dark umber somewhere here. And then I brought in Van Dyke brown, which is just a darker, dark umber. And then honestly, because we are in the current world that exists, we have new neutrals that they didn't really use this much. So I brought it a gold ochre and an Indian yellow hue. And I'm gonna work with those colors. I've got 3 pieces in front of me. And I'm gonna see, so part of her thing is that she was definitely part of the Jackson Pollock scene, in that when Pollock started to do these large pieces that involved a lot of throwing of materials, so to say, and splattering, and many layers. So, you know, we're gonna work on kind of this raw form of drawing that you can see in some of her umber pieces. And then what I'm gonna have us do is I'm gonna have us actually rip them up. She never cut them. We're gonna rip them up. And then we're gonna add some colored pieces to them. As you can see, some of them are just like, I mean, when I look at these pieces, I just see somebody whose life partner, even though they were not, even though they were, I think, romantically separated, dead while she was out of the country, you know? So does that make sense for everyone? Do you guys want to talk about kind of gestural, some ways to be a little more gestural, if you say, are locking up? Because I think sometimes as artists, we want it to be too perfect. So I've got a couple of commentaries for you. One, how you hold your brush is going to be really key here. Oh, we can leave Lee Krasner. Goodbye, Lee Krasner. We love you. You know, I just, again, like Joan Mitchell, I think that she's so impactful. She was not taken seriously in the same way that Joan Mitchell wasn't taken seriously. They worked very close together, which is why they're natural. I have to admit that I really don't like brown. I have a hard time with brown. I surprised myself with how much I love Lee Krasner's Umber series, and I'm excited to challenge myself, which means I may just fail in front of your face, to use these color palettes that feel so far away from what I'm used to doing. I'm gonna work on super loosely, super loose strokes. Something that I do for myself, because if you hold the paintbrush too tightly, it feels super controlled. Something that I do is I hold my paintbrush differently. I hold it more like a wand, and I try really hard if I'm too tight on my strokes to spin it, because you can't control it if you're spinning it, right? That's not the best, most controlled. The intention here is to kind of work with your own kind of natural inclinations. So I'm gonna just work and see what comes out of Lee Krasner's Umber series. We'll see, right? I wish I had like smooth jazz to play while we like your interlude. We'll see. My umber is always a super thick paint, and I always feel like I have to flush it out pretty hardcore because it's so thick. But you know, I'm working with acrylic today. I will tell you that when we get to the part of the class where we start to work on collaging, that I tend to use watercolor on top of acrylic scraps for collage. I think we talked about this previously once before, that like watercolor does better on top of acrylic because it's going to be reignited anytime water is added to it. So you kind of want it to be the last layer. I think it just adds a delightful transparent top layer. I'm not sure what Lee.
Should we be watching you or should we be going for it?
You should be going for it. You're going to need to create scraps. These are not going to be, I want you to try and make good pieces here, but the reality is the whole intention here is to tear it up. I'm trying thinner strokes because that's what I noticed in Lee's work, which I assume, you know, is kind of her painterly center and we'll see where it gets me, right? Perfect little Tuesday afternoon. You want music too. We need like a live musician to come and just hang on our Zoom and perform for us while we paint. This is very interesting the way these marks come out, I have to say. Oh, wow. I got paint on my eyelid with that little splatter I just did, you know, so be careful. Moments for me to do a safety conversation. Wow.
Sorry.
Oh, it happens to me too. I'm being fairly quick about these, mainly because they need to dry. I will tell you that I collected a bunch of my own scraps, like previous stuff that I had for the collaging part, just to make it a little quicker and easier. This is precisely why I have to have a keyboard cover, is because I do things like this, get paint on the keyboard. Whew. I could see where Lee might feel like she was getting some rage out in some of these splatter experiences.
Think what we could do working with artists in Texas right now.
I know, right? I can't even imagine how, like, the feeling of wanting to leave you know, that you must feel, and the, I don't know, the experience of it all. When I was in college, one of the last years, you know, probably my senior year, we'd had a student who came the couple of years before me and worked with the Women and Gender Studies department to build a program called Queer Migration, or called Queer Theory. And it was just really like an offshoot of Women and Gender Studies, really. But one of the classes that I took from it that I thought was really interesting was I took a class called Queer Migrations, and it talked about safety and being LGBTQ and the decisions that you have to make about where your housing is. And I imagine that a lot of people in Texas are kind of, a lot of women in particular, obviously, or those with uteruses, are feeling as though they have to make some very serious choices about where it's safe for them to live.
Oh, absolutely.
I wouldn't be a doctor working in Texas, that's for sure. I'd be like, see you, Texas, sorry. The part that I thought was very interesting was how Texas rates is lowest on almost every factor around having children, like post-birth care, all that kind of stuff. I am blown away by it all.
Yeah.
It's the long game, you know? I am going to do this for about 12 more minutes just so that you all know. And then at 4:15, I'm going to show you some of Lou Krasner's collaged pieces. And then I'm going to show you kind of some of the ways that I go about doing the collage part of it. So like I said, you know, you want to kind of let your pieces start drying fairly soon. You might also scavenge in some bins for old pieces that you didn't think were working very well. I literally have a flat file 3-drawer like coffee table thing that is full of old work that didn't work that I use for collage.
Okay, sorry, I lost you guys for a while. My audio went out, so
Oh, I am so sorry to hear that. Well, I'm glad.
that's okay. It's back. I didn't miss anything, I don't think.
I don't think so. You didn't miss the important stuff.
Trying to mix this damn paint.
It's interesting working with this kind of color scheme because your value is hard to determine.
Yeah.
I will take a picture of something if I am worried about value and I'm finding that the colors that I'm using are not allowing me to clearly see value. I will take a picture of it in the black and white filter on my camera, because that is like going to be your best non-color oriented way to figure out value. A reminder for those who don't quite remember, value is basically the darkness of your hue. You want to make sure in a good composition, you know, that there's a balance of both. That you're paying attention to how dark the dark one is. Like, so now I'm adding, you guys can't see it, but I'll add it to other ones. I am using that Van Dyke brown that I talked about on top of my raw umber and my ochre as a way of adding some definition into my compositions. So it's in the same family, it's a brown, but it's almost like a black brown. And so it actually comes into the paintings and really like makes some things stand out. So I'll probably do this and then look at it with my camera to see like how much more I need. I don't know about other people, but I tend to shy away from dark work. I tend to shy away from black or any kind of dark colors. Like I feel like sometimes they just take over composition. So with this work, one of the things that I really want to work on is how to better use the darks, because IA could be better at that. And clearly that was one of the parts that I felt like made such an impact when I was looking at Lee's work. So it's always good to like challenge yourself if you find that you're doing a habit too often, to not be afraid to, you know, step outside of your own comfort zone. Okay. So much drawing now. Okay, let's see the big reveal. Okay. Ah. I'm going to share photos of what mine look like in color and in black and white, so you guys can see what I mean by the value thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Caristia,
Yeah.
you're making your own bits now, not just using older ones, or are you adding to older ones?
Well, I did these ones because my example is in the color scheme that I was telling you about, the raw umber and the
Uh-huh.
dark brown. So my older bits and pieces are going to be bright colors. So my thought process is, while these are drying, right, I will make a couple of added pieces for myself in the color scheme that I'm working in. Mainly just because honestly, these 3 tubes aren't used at all. I'm gonna think a lot about what colors to add and how to add them sparingly. When we go through Lee's work, you'll see how she really was intelligent about how she added color. So I'm just making some more neutral, larger pieces for myself. I feel like it'll be beneficial, right? As I let this kind of wildness dry. I actually really like these 3 paintings the way that they are. They're really beautiful. I'm excited to kind of tear them up and see what they become as I throw them on the floor of my studio. Really, I'm just making a giant mess if you really want to know. Like, I have paint everywhere right now. So I'm going to show a couple of images of Lee's work. I'm going to let my work dry a little bit before I use it. It doesn't have to be totally dry, but it wants to be dry enough that you're feeling good about it. Okay. Let's go back to Ms. Lee Krasner. Okay, so there is a gallery that specializes in Lee's work, her collage pieces, called Casman Gallery. Hold on, this is not the right one. Give me a second. Here we go. Here we go, folks. These ones are the ones. Okay, again, you want to talk about scale and like the undertaking that Lee's work is. These are human size. They're as tall as you know. And what these ones are the ones you can see where she clearly took her pieces and recreated it into other pieces. Lee was very shape based, and so you can see where she actually kind of cut out actual shapes and then reapplied them together. This one you can see is, a whole bunch of her drawings that she shredded and then put down on a more neutral background, which I think is very interesting to me. I like the way that like she reuses the color here. You can see where the splatter pieces come into this. These shards are very interesting to me. It's not how I do my collage, but I think it's a really interesting way of reusing your own work. And like I said, I compulsively, these two, I think these two are some of my favorites. If they'll pull up correctly, we'll see. I, mainly because I don't do well with kind of the messier pieces, right? I find them very interesting and kind of ethereal. So how what I am generally working on when I'm doing collage like this, hold on, let's go back to this. Okay. So I create my pieces in very large format paper, and then they're often trimmed down to show a specific composition. I just did some commissions. And so what I end up with are little pieces like this, right? They're really beautiful, actually. They have kind of all of the best parts of the painting, but they're just kind of in this nonsensical little slice, And like this one is another great example of the same kind of thing, where it's just a slice where I have trimmed down the larger composition. So what I'm going to do with these works is I'm going to tear up some of these pieces that I made that are the Umber series. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reincorporate this piece that was from a painting that I just finished literally like the day before I went to Edgefield for the weekend. It feels like it's got a lot of great colors that'll be really interesting kind of solutions in my paintings over here. I'm gonna cut the paint, I'm gonna rip the paintings up. I definitely used a thicker paper than I would suggest for this. A little bit, you know, I'm sure she did with more abandon. I'm not gonna do quite so much abandon. I'm gonna tell you guys what I look for when I'm doing this kind of process though. Part of it is like, it's just not working. So I like to tear them off into little pieces so that they become tiny little moments. You know, they're the itty bittiest little moment, but they're still really magical little moments. And so they feel like they deserve a stage of some sort, right? So I start with a clean sheet of white paper after I'm gonna rip up all of these. Some of them are still kind of wet. Like I said, you gotta be careful with yourself. I'm already super messy anyway, so why not? And then I like to start with a white piece of paper. Generally, what I'm looking for at the start of my collage is a larger piece that feels significant in some way, meaning that I've kept a part of a painting that, while it's entirely its own painting, still feels really beautiful. I think a great example of this in this work that I'm doing right here is, I really like this edge here. I think that I don't want this dark brown part in it though. So I'm gonna rip that out. And I feel like it's like a really good base start. It's a neutral, it's really beautiful in the like color formations that it's in. So what I'm gonna do, get a new piece of paper, let my little shardy shards keep drying more. Get myself a new block. New paper. And then I'm going to figure out the orientation of my new main piece. This one's kind of large, so it doesn't really, it can go this direction. I would have to rip it down. I do rip all of my collage. I'm not a cutter. That does not mean that cutting is not beneficial. I want you guys to do what feels good to you. But I'm gonna rip the kind of this edge off a little bit. And I tend to, with my collage pieces, Lee didn't really like to do this, but I tend to like to leave space at the bottom. Like, so when you look at the paper, it looks like it's its own painting. She just likes to refill the page. Okay. What makes this significant is that then you can look at other pieces as to how they're going to integrate into what you're already creating. I can already tell you that I have this piece right here that's a little circle. And you can see it's like the edge of a little circle here. And I will probably figure out a way to make this move into my other collage pieces, not necessarily as a circle, but kind of finishing the form. I tend to look for ways that my larger splotches, so to say, can integrate into each other. An important thing to think about when we're working on these collages, and the reason that I brought up the value thing is that value can get lost when you're putting together pieces of paintings that weren't painted together. So you need to make sure that you make intentional choices about darkness and making sure that there's a balance of dark and light. So I tend to actually have to make myself dark pieces because I want to make sure that I'm having enough dark in them. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
So what I want you to do is tear up some previous work. I want you to try and find ways to fall in love with tiny pieces, because that I think is what comes from this process the best, is that you can really get to know your paintings on a kind of a micro level. Don't be afraid to create new pieces or to go to stashes. I'm gonna take a picture of some of this and put it through on WhatsApp. Ooh, oh man, Jeannie. It's like, this is your color scheme, huh?
Yeah.
Look how beautiful that gray is.
I think gray's a neutral, right?
Yeah, it's a perfect neutral. And it looks stunning. Isn't it interesting when you take out the bright colors and you only focus on the neutrals, how the neutrals then look even more magnificent? Because I don't think I appreciate gray as much in a lot of other formats, but I really like them in your pieces here. They're really quite beautiful. Let's talk about adhesive a little bit. I have been a lifelong Mod Podger. I love Mod Podge. It is a thing that you have to get good at using. And what I have found for myself is that my Uhu stick is my favorite at this time. It gives you a little bit of room. If you decide you need to move it, you still have some time to figure that out. It's really quick and it dries and it gets sticky really quick, which is really nice. But in general, I use a glue stick at this phase.
Then do you Mod Podge over?
It will, it's going to depend on. So here's another thing. If I do too much watercolor on top, and what I mean by adding watercolor is I've got all this stuff. I've got such a mess. It's just the messest of messes. See, look how beautiful this is going to look with it. You can't really see it. It's got tiny little lines. Oh, come on, Carissa, your brain can't really handle it. Tiny little lines. The orange is going to be so beautiful. So if I have a piece like this brown piece that I've got right here, and I want to, something about it doesn't feel right, like I want to lighten it usually, is kind of what it is. I have my trusty watercolor pan that got lots of attention at the concert. And I will do super transparent top layers on it just to lighten it up or bring out some new color. Okay, and I do this during most of my collaging. So here's the problem with Mod Podge. If I go through this process and I add watercolor to it, adding Mod Podge is likely to reinvigorate your watercolor and smear it. So if you only use acrylic and you only use materials like acrylic, or you spray it with hairspray, then you can Mod Podge the top of it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I actually used to be a super diehard Mod Podger, and I didn't use watercolor at all. And then I started using watercolor and I had to find new solutions, is essentially what happened. I like the ease of travel of watercolor. So I'm going to post a picture of this watercolor enhanced slice that I have here, just so that you can see how the transparent watercolor lays on top of the opaque acrylic, which, is why I like to use it. And this is also my favorite color that Audrey had to go online and find me backup little pans of so that I could use it. Oh yeah, Les, that purple, I'm into it.
Thanks.
Looks so
I'm not
good.
sure how neutral it is, but
I actually really see, I think that, when you can use dusty purple as a neutral in the same way you use gray as a neutral.
Okay.
It's actually one of my favorite neutrals. I love both of these compositions. I think that you do a really good job balancing your dark and lights. That might be from,
thank you. I'm really starting to get into it, man. Like over the weekend.
I'm really interested how abstract art is changing for you. I'm excited to see it, especially the pieces that you did while, learning about Joan Mitchell. I will be really honest, when I became an abstract painter, I was not a Joan Mitchell, Lee Krasner kind of abstract painter. I found
Well, I've always loved abstract art. My mother was really into abstract art and really exposed me to a lot of female abstract artists like Louise Nevelson. I loved her when I was a kid because my mother loved her and my mom collected pottery. It's kind of crazy how wonderful she was about those things and pretty crappy about other stuff.
Isn't that how the road goes? I have over time come to realize the complexity about kind of these fuller, more dynamic abstract art. I definitely came into abstract art more like a Heather Day girl, large
Yeah.
wash, or even like a Helen Frankenthaler, large washes that seeped into materials, and those washes were super dynamic. The more that I do abstract art, I appreciate the freedom and kind of the physical veracity that some of these other forms take. And actually, the paintings that I did for the Joan Mitchell class are some of my favorite paintings so far. I do really like my Basquiat paintings, but I think that they're really beautiful and very interesting and entrancing to me. So I'm excited. The pieces that I did for the show that I was talking about when I did the Lee Krasner show, I actually reworked large format abstract art pieces and recollaged them, but it was not this format because this was not how my work looked, you know. Editing yourself is always good. I'm a big fan of taking the time to go back through your work and deciding what to keep and what to let go of.
Yeah, it's like that piece I sent through the over the WhatsApp.
The WhatsApp, yeah.
Yeah, that has the eyes in it, you know, it's just like,
Yeah.
I'm like, it's super busy, right? But I like it. And that's the hardest thing, is that simplicity and then finding balance. Like I look at Lee Krasner's work and it has so much balance.
Right.
With the movement, you know, all you see her moving in it. And that's the part I'm working hard on, right?
Balance is one of the most important things. You know, I would say the two most important factors in good abstract art is balance and surprise.
Yeah.
I think you lose your audience if your piece doesn't have something in it that feels unexpected.
Yeah, I agree.
I just like her sassiness, frankly, watching her interviews. Like I watched them before.
You could tell.
Sassy ladies. Interesting fact about Lee Krasner. She lived in near abject poverty. I mean, her whole life. And one of her pieces just went for what, 10 million?
Yeah, I was thinking about that when we were watching it, going, she lived incredibly poor all her life. And
yep.
So I used to struggle with that because I got a full-time job at the college and I'm like, why am I not painting full-time? Am I not sacrificing enough? You know, it's that struggle, but I'm glad I had my job and I'll have retirement, but I'm just like, maybe I'm not really a quote unquote artist because I'm not poor, like, you know, Lee Krasner.
That recipe is the same for everyone. I think the stability, financial stability, allows you to experiment in ways that not having that kind of stability doesn't allow you to do.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, at first my only goal with my painting was that it needed to pay for itself. I did mental health billing on the side as a business.
Oh, really?
And I did that for years. I still have 3 or 4 clients. And honestly, like I keep those clients because those contracts pay my rent.
Yeah.
So I know no matter what, I won't be homeless, that my bills are covered, that if I don't sell any work this month or whatnot, that I'm not at a total loss. Okay, Nina, let's look at your value. Isn't it interesting how you lose some of that light yellow color when you look at it just from the black and white?
Yeah.
That's always one of the interesting parts for me. It's really well
And
balanced.
you,
So
yeah, you could see it in that far left corner of that first one of mine. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4 colors there, and you don't really see it in the black and the white.
right? It's such an interesting tool for me. I sent a picture and I circled something for you guys.
I see
And
it.
I want to talk about, this is one of the things that I work on in my own collage that I think makes it interesting is I like to find the spots where one line of one piece
Okay.
continues onto another piece. For me, what I find is that if I build out looking for those moments, it will be a more cohesive piece in the end. So don't be afraid to look for that kind of moment when you're doing it. I actually really like everybody's neutrals. It's very interesting to me as such a color person. I really love all of the neutrals, and I love how differently you all did it.
Gosh, dang it. Sorry, just dropping my iPad.
Your iPad's not playing nice today, I'm noticing.
No, it's because I'm working in like a 2x2 space. I have too much crap on my work table.
My work table is so atrocious. You guys are so lucky you don't have to see the full table, that you only have to see the little bit in front.
Caristia, can you look at mine before I start gluing?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, you got some great pieces there. Here's my question for you, something to
Mhm.
think about.
No, please.
How are you going to make these colors go well together? And what I mean by that is, eventually it's this kind of work you end up having to come in with a little bit of paint to make things more cohesive.
Mhm.
I love you're adding blue into your neutrals. I think it's a really great choice. I would work small square and see if you can get a really good small collage. Do you see what I'm saying?
No.
Because like lines on the right are so beautiful. You got the little kind of gray line and the kind of red lines.
Mhm.
they're a great starting piece. That's the piece I would start from. It's the piece that I think is the most dynamic. What are you thinking about them? Let's talk through some of your choices.
Well, I wasn't sure about the three little pieces in the middle, but I like the gold, the way the yellow gold mixes in with the largest
Yeah.
piece.
Absolutely. I like that it gives some accent and it kind of brings some light into the painting, which is really nice.
Mhm.
You know, I wouldn't, you know, if you really like that yellow gold piece, my number one thing is start with the piece you love the most.
Okay.
It really like start from there, because then you're starting from the heart of the painting. And then just figure out either by adding watercolor or by collaging on top of it, how to make it seem somewhat of a cohesive statement.
Not just a mishmash of a bunch of old
But it
stuff.
can be though. So some really good collage artists do mishmashes. Just make sure that the lines between them are hard. Okay. Like you can see that this was intentionally meant to be one selection, and then I intentionally added another selection. And what I will do is I will show you guys, I have a November show coming up that is actually collage work. And so I've been doing a lot of it. And I'll show you what I mean by hard lines on patterns. Give me a second. Clearly going through my whole phone is going to be some work. Okay. You can see here, this is one of the collages that I just made for my upcoming show, where I had like the stripes were their own piece entirely because they're their own pattern. And I actually brought them on top of one of the other slices of paper. You just want to make sure, like I like to add, like you see that yellow line in there between the two pieces of blue paper. The reason that's in there is A, that it has text in it that's really funny. It says something about electricity. And because I like to make it clear that they're defining different moments. So maybe something to think about with your work, because you got so many awesome little patterns, is how can you intentionally make them look like separate pieces rather than trying to make them look like one piece? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I think that honestly, collaging with your own work is some of the best way to get to understand the reason that you make the decisions you make. I'll be right back. I have to get a coffee refill. Thank you for your patience, everyone. I traveled today, so I'm in extra need of the caffeinated experience. Also, don't be afraid to play with negative space in your collages. Like if you have one piece that you just want to be completely on its own, you know, you want to do some kind of tension with it, don't be afraid to do it. feel like I'm so much more successful making the weird collage material than I am collaging with it. Okay. I'm gonna let that one sit to the side because I feel like it needs a break. It needs me to step away from it for a little bit and find something else. Okay. So on my second collage, I'm trying to do more like Lee Krasner, super full, massive marks on marks to see if I feel more successful. Just so that you know some of the strategies I'm using. Definitely just tried to grab white paint as a glue stick. Definitely not glue stick. Am fairly good, knock on wood, at not drinking my paint water or putting my paintbrushes in my coffee. But sometimes the grabbing of materials, I'm not always so good at keeping separate. Okay, so I did a totally different approach this time. Tried to create a dynamic background using my little pieces, filling in the space, and then using tiny little shards of brightly colored other collage pieces to bring a little bit of accent to it. And we will see how successful it is in comparison, because I feel like that is, in looking at Lee's work, that's what it feels like. She used these kind of brightly colored shards of other pieces to come in and create some tension. So okay. Interesting. Okay. I'm going to send a picture of this one because I want to talk about a couple of things that I did intentionally on here. Like I said, I filled it up. It's way fuller than normal. But I'm going to send it through to the WhatsApp. And what I did when I decided to add kind of these shards or splotches of super intense colors, I come back to that rule of thirds where it is, I think that it's important if you're going to introduce a new element into a painting that you do it in odd numbers. In this case, the three little splotches of orange as a way of kind of defining kind of some movement. Because you can see, even though the background is super busy, those three orange pieces end up kind of popping out. You can see that I also made sure that I still have some dark lines, because those dark lines are driving people through the painting and the actual composition. It's amazing to me how the background kind of, it's not washes, but it kind of works really well together because they're just made of the same kind of base colors. I'm surprised at how much I like it, considering it's so freaking busy. Again, another moment where it really does make me think of Lee Krasner and her work. I love the green piece in the middle of the purple, Nina. I love those. Oh, yeah, look at you all. I love it. I love the way that the lines kind of move through some of your shards, Leslie. Like that your collage is like, yeah, the black actually moves through some of it. It's moments like that. Like I like that in Nina's piece, that green piece is there. It's a shape, it sticks out. That is something that I'm attracted to in collage personally. But I also really love the way that you've created tension using those kind of brush strokes that pre-existed. It's also on the left, you can see that there's that little circle spot almost, and it sits right on the edge of the tip of that black line, or dark, whatever. It's beautiful. How do you feel about it when you see it like this? Like,
I like it. I've moved it around several times. I had a lot more of the pieces with those drips on it, and I just I took them out, because it's the white space that throws me off, but I like it now. I feel like it moves better.
Also, like, this is a great opportunity to remember that you can paint, and if you don't want to just have white space, you can paint a neutral color in that backspace. Or something like that. Sometimes I have just like, I have colored paper, and sometimes I'll put that down behind it because I just feel like it gives it a different kind of feel. But I like it with white personally. I think it's really successful. I'm actually really enjoying all of the different, Nina, your smiley face on this one right here just makes me so happy. I can't even, it just gives me such joy. I'm going to take a picture of this one that I'm working on. I actually really like it. I feel really good about it. I always know it's a good sign if I feel like I want to sign it, but I'd like to see it. I'd like to know how the value is shaping up, because I feel like it's got so much neutral that it can be hard for me to have a really clear perspective. It's interesting. Huh. It's nice though. I like it. Overall, it's a piece that I very much enjoy, considering it's not a color scheme that I would normally work with, or kind of a process I would normally work with. It does make me want to come back to this one, which is a good sign, right? So different, if you ever could see difference. And we'll see if I can make this one make any kind of sense. Sometimes, you push it and it just never goes anywhere. Hmm. This was interesting because I see like a story in it, even though it's just a weird collage. Oh man. It's interesting how the collage pieces, Nina, on this one, I feel like they were part of the original intent. Like they just looked like they were supposed to be there. Especially the little dot on the one on the left in the bottom. It really like makes me feel like it was supposed to be there. I, in working on this collage, ended up drawing a little girl in a dress and didn't mean to. And she makes me laugh too. Maybe I'm just thinking of Nina's faces. I need to. Oh. Yeah, Jeannie, I was hoping yours would come through soon. See, I love the way that that yellow, again, looks like it was just originally part of the whole composition.
Mhm.
It
Yeah,
becomes
one of the neutrals I was using is unbleached titanium, and that has a kind of goldish yellow in it.
Yeah, I love that.
it
Um,
looks beautiful.
also, I actually painted a lot of the torn lines, and yet it doesn't feel like a bunch of separate pieces, I don't think.
Right. It comes together as one, right? Because it's like when you stitch clothing together, it all looks like one piece, but really it's different
Bunch of different pieces,
that's
yeah,
been properly stitched. Yeah, it looks beautiful. I really like it. I think it's a really dynamic piece, and what I think is really nice about it is I like that it kind of glows. And I am attracted to work that I feel like I see kind of like sun in or kind of glowing light. So I think you guys are making beautiful work, even though this is it can be a very frustrating process, trying to make sense of so many different dynamic shapes. I definitely immediately realized, like, as soon as I could, I came out of the neutrals because clearly the neutrals aren't where I like to live. And I've been enjoying trying to make some of these. I have only tiny little pieces left at this point, I think. Oh no, I was hiding a bunch from myself. Want to work them in with some of these other things because my work is larger washes, so it's interesting to bring something that's super dynamic and figure out how do you make them work together or speak together like they were intentional. We're gonna see if I can do it.